Among Us isn't slop? No, it's not a slop at all. It's like shit you play with your friends. That's not, no, you guys think slop just means like because something is bad. And this is my fault for ever using the word. And it's a fun word to say, so everyone just runs away with it. It's like gooner. Like now people say, man, what a gooner. Because a guy's like, I like big breasts or whatever. Nothing means anything, okay? Dead dictionary theory. True. All language must evolve into a word meaning good or a word meaning bad. It's very Orwellian, no? It's like newspeak, except instead of reducing our usable words down to like good or bad, we just reduce the range of meaningful expression down to good or bad. What is friend slop but double plus ungood? That's actually just how human language works? No, not really. I think that because of social media, internet culture, and a general lack of like literacy, people usually race towards hyperbole in the language they use, which means that a lot of words basically get the same definitions. It gets folded down into the same range of expression. Language has been poisoned. There is a reason why people nowadays are much less literate and have a much harder time communicating than people did just a couple of decades ago, you know? I'm not talking like 200 years ago or whatever. I'm just saying, like, even over the course of my lifetime, I remember people generally being better at communicating. Yeesh. The TikTokification of language. It's probably goes back to the television, as opposed to the Middle Ages where people were widely literate. That's why I was comparing to a few decades ago and not 500 years ago. That being said, I would argue that, like, for one, medieval peasants were more literate than we give them credit for. Like, you need to be literate to read signs, maps, and create a ledger, which farmers needed to do. There was like, they weren't fully literate, but they were somewhat literate. And also, I would argue for those who were literate, yeah, it's pretty objectively true that they were much, much more verbose than we are now. People like to cope and they're like, oh, the reason why people are more verbose in these letters from the 19th century is because they're all like learned aristocrats. No! A lot of those letters are being written by people with undergraduate degrees, which like half of everyone has now. You know? These are people who have had like more, like, they technically, by virtue of not having access to the internet, the range of information they have open to them is much lower than what you have, but they were vastly more literate, more capable of communicating than we are. Not necessarily smarter, but it was definitely something they paid more attention to. They did. They placed a lot of importance on language, for sure. I think we just got to write more poetry. I mean, yeah, sure. Poetry is an important thing to study. Yeah. The reason why old letters are more verbose is because the ones that survived are the ones that are well written. That's not necessarily true. Seriously, like, I bet you could find a treasure trove from one of your great-grandparents right now of the love letters sent to them by your other great-grandparent, and you would find that even for these, like, normal people, like, 70, 80 years ago, they were a lot more thoughtful with how they communicated, you know? And I probably had lower, like, on average, lower level of education than you. It's not just the selection bias. What survives is definitely part of it, but no, we cared more about language back then, you know? It's not an innate thing. You know, people could get better at it if they tried. I could. I don't. You know, I'm not suggesting that I'm better than you guys. I'm saying we're all part of the same, you know, literacy decay. I have about 300 family letters from World War II. It's crazy how both the penmanship and the language compares to today. Yeah, seriously. The average GI sent overseas during World War II, the average American, you know, Pacific European theater, whatever, had like no secondary or post-secondary education. You know, we're talking like fucking anemic 18-year-olds getting sent over, and they were still way the fuck more thoughtful, you know? Probably the average one, probably like 80 IQ. I don't know. Because the Flynn effect, people, the IQ standard is raised over time. So they were probably, like, in a general sense, much less intelligent than we are. But they were a lot better at writing. So, yeah, I don't know. Kind of a lost skill. I want to improve my literacy. You know what the best way to do it is? Read, motherfucker. Read. Best way to learn how to write is to read. Nobody reads anymore because everyone's watching stuff, but you're the relationship between getting good at writing and reading is much greater than the relationship between getting good at writing and watching movies or whatever, you know? Is there an option two? Die. Perish. I read fan fiction. Does that count? No. Disagree? I know you do, because fan fiction readers are super defensive. It's like the book talk people talk about how they read 6 books a week, and then it turns out they're all softcore pornography. The problem with reading fan fiction is that you're reading stuff written by people who are suffering from the same literacy crisis that you're trying to recover from, you know? Reading, you have to challenge yourself. People read fan fiction because it's comfortable. I don't care if you think you're the exception, okay? Overwhelmingly, I know how these circles operate, okay? You get fixated with characters, you're interested in seeing them play out in different scenarios. And I don't care, okay? You're not widening your mind, all right? You're not growing it for the most part. And audiobooks don't count. No, audiobooks don't count. You have to actually read. Also, in medieval times, peasants might not be fully literate, but they could remember poems, songs, recipes, and even designs from memory. My dad once went over to India, and he got fucking hyper-mogged. He got mogged so fucking hard. He was over in India in the 90s, and India in the 90s, I mean, it's not super developed today, but it was even less so back then. He was over there working on a project. They were doing shooting overseas, and my dad had, wait, was it the 90s? My dad had, whatever the time period was, had like the earliest version of the portable music playing device back then. I don't know if it was like the Walkman, like the Sony Walkman, like a CD player. I don't remember what exactly the device was. But he was listening to, he was just walking around listening to some music in the town that he was in, and he ended up striking a conversation with some locals who were literate enough, not literate, sorry, is literate in English? No, like verbose enough. Why am I blanking on this word? See, now I'm illiterate, you know. It's not spoke English, it's fluent. Thank you, fluent. God, who are fluent enough in English they could have like a regular conversation, not like a strained one. And basically they were like, hey, what the fuck is that device? I've never seen that before. And my dad was like, oh, da-da-da, explains it. Listening to some music. And they're like, you're listening to music with that? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, why are you doing that? And my dad was like, well, I like this music. And, you know, I like listening to it. And they were like, well, if you like the music, then why don't you just play it in your head? Fucking mogged. My dad still remembered that conversation like 20 years later. Just rotate a cow in your mind. I mean, over there especially, yeah. Hey, this white boy needs a machine to listen to music. I can't do the accent they would have had because people would say it's offensive. You can do like a bad New Yorker accent and people don't get mad at you, even though you're basically just doing like a Jersey Shore Italian thing or whatever. You can't do a bad Indian accent. People will cancel you. I saw what happened to the original voice actor for Apu. You know, I don't want to get into it. There is unironically a truth to that. No, there is. I don't think it's bad to have a music player, but the more you outsource to machines, the less you can do. If you have a calculator on your phone or in your pocket or whatever, you're less likely to be good at doing snap arithmetic. If you have a notepad to keep down, you know, memories, then you're less likely to develop a good memory. Everything your brain can do is a muscle that can be learned or neglected, you know? You just have to make intelligent choices about what you want to preserve and what you don't want to preserve, you know? I think it's probably a good thing to be able to write stuff down and like record your memories. That's probably okay. I'm okay with that. But, you know, it would be a bit of a social faux pas if you went to a party and every time somebody told you their name, like you're meeting them for the first time, you took out a notepad and wrote it down. Maybe you should just like work on remembering the name like that, you know? The act of writing stuff down also counts aboard your memory in the short term. Yeah, like if you're trying to remember notes or something like that. I think the argument, was it Aristotle who said this? Aristotle who bemoaned that written language would be the death of human memory because it was Socrates. You're subsidizing the... Plato thought it was bad. Well, Plato, Socrates, you know, jerking each other off. This is true from a musician's perspective, between musicians. Yeah, like here's a big one. I bet you that now that there are apps that you can use to help you like precisely tune a musical instrument or recognize a song, people have gotten worse at knowing how to do those things just off ear, you know? Like if you have a machine that can do it perfectly, why bother doing it yourself? Why develop that skill? They also thought women being literate would destroy human civilization. Yeah, and look where we are right now. AI, data centers, etc., etc. So, you know. I used to think, oh, I'm just bad at names, and then I realized I just didn't actually care to learn people's names. No, literally, that's the cope is, and I'm fully willing to admit that I'm in this camp too. The cope is, well, I just can't do X, or I can't remember X. The truth is, you just don't care to. You're not prioritizing enough, you know? You could learn to do basically anything. We're not talking about physical skills. We're not talking, well, can you do like a 6-foot standing jump? Probably not. That's pretty tough, you know? No fault if you can't. But for brain skills, I mean, there's a lot of plasticity up there, even as you get older. You could probably put the effort in to get, you know, to get better at it. You just have to prioritize it, and that takes being considerate. It's like, if people were being honest, when they forget to do something that they promised another person to do, like, oh, I was going to get you a gift, or I was going to do you this favor, I was going to run you this errand, when you say I forgot, it would be more accurate to say I didn't prioritize remembering it. That would be more accurate, like 99% of the time. Sometimes something happens that genuinely like jars your brain and disrupts your memory, like there's some event, or it's like something like actually gets you mentally off track. But for the most part, if you would put effort in, you could have had that shit cycling in your mind to the point where you would not have forgotten. That'd be so mean, though. Yeah, which is why it's like it's socially preferable to say I forgot, because it's rude to say I didn't prioritize remembering. But, you know, it is what it is. Nah, you all get me. Yeah, that's why I kind of think mass access to information might in part hurt our critical thinking skills. Well, that's one of the reasons why I've always stressed, like really aggressively stressed the idea that good, like becoming more knowledgeable in, especially in like politics or sociology or whatever else, has more to do with media literacy than it does knowing where to get your info. Because where you get your info from is going to change over time. The reliability of different sources, what sources are available, whether or not they're lying to you, what their biases are, all of these things can shift over time, especially nowadays where the whole world seems designed to destroy your ability to believe concretely in anything with AI and, you know, mass media and so on and so forth, you know, fucking poly market sports betting. Like, there are so many reasons to distrust everything you see, but the underlying logic, the process of like analyzing what you're looking at, you know, that stays pretty consistent. You want to get better at the underlying skill than you do like the collection of knowledge. Just collecting knowledge is a, you know, it's not useless at all, but there is a bit of a shelf life, you know? Writing in cursive is also good for your brain. Okay, boomer. As a car guy, this is one thing I appreciate about the hobby. You're really forced to learn how to work in the car if you want to be in the crowd. It's a valuable skill set. Very valuable skill set. Absolutely. Don't know what that has to do with what I was talking about necessarily, but I don't disagree. How do you solve for air pollution, though? I promise you, if you live in the United States or in a Western European country, air pollution today is significantly better than it was even 50 years ago. Basically, like 1850 to 1960 was like the prime destroying your brain via air pollution period. Right now, we're in the upswing, okay? I promise you that. But if you're worried about dementia, play video games. Playing video games is great. You develop and maintain the neuroplasticity that helps you. The best way to keep your mind sharp as you get older is keep experiencing new things and don't delegate too many of your mental responsibilities to other people or other systems, you know? You have to challenge your expectations. This is why, like, one of the biggest signs that a person is going to calcify and stop growing as a human being once they turn like 40 or something, or once they marry off or whatever, is if they obstinately refuse to consider the value of new media. Like, movies or music or anything else that came out after they were 17 is all garbage. Oh, you haven't heard real music because you weren't around in the 1980s. There was good stuff in the 1980s. There was good stuff in the 1880s. There's good stuff today. I don't know. I think it's complicated, you know? As soon as you like write that off, like you're basically locking your brain. It's arrested development. As an adult, you're basically locking your brain into a particular time in your life, and you're like, nah, I want to keep it there. I want to keep it there forever. Popular music has probably gotten worse, though. It's possible for like what's incentivized or what's popular to have gotten worse. I don't really know. Again, I'm no expert. I don't fucking care. But like what's out there is still good. If you don't like popular music, then go find some non-popular music. Go find some like indie shit. I don't fucking know. You know? There's like a million new songs being written every day. There's got to be some good stuff out there. So is there such a thing as a golden age for anything? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. But when it comes to media, when I think of a golden age of X, what I think of is like a big breakthrough in innovation or in accessibility or in popularity, you know? But like, just because the big golden age of indie games began in the, I don't know, 2010, whatever you want to put it, 2015, whatever the fuck, that doesn't mean there weren't good indie games coming out before. Fucking Cave Story set that shit, and that came out, I don't know, 5 million years ago. Cave Story was so ahead of its time. Dude, Cave Story still feels like it came out yesterday. If you go and play Cave Story today, it genuinely feels like it could have released on Steam in 2025. It's insane how ahead of its time it was. Unbelievable. I do think there are golden ages for specific things. Man, look. Regardless of like the average quality and how it shifts over time, the point is this, okay? You can't let your brain calcify. You can't write off something that's new because you're like, nah, no. The point in time when I was in high school, that's when all media peaked, you know? These people mentally die in their 30s and 40s. They never change from that point onward. Meanwhile, you can, to this very day, maybe it's your grandparents, maybe it's your neighbors, there are old people out there who are pretty fucking cool, you know? They seem active, sprightly, engaged, energetic, empathetic, helpful, they're willing to learn, and usually they're kind of like that, you know? They're like, oh, I'm interested in the world. I didn't stop being interested in the world as soon as it stopped catering to my preferences. My preferences grew and shifted with time, you know? I accommodated, I grew with the world. These people tend to live longer and have better lives. Anyway. You are wrong about U.S. air pollution. Nearly half of Americans are breathing in unsafe levels of air pollutants. How does that make me wrong about air pollution? That would just mean that more Americans were breathing in air pollutants before. Why be contrarian? I was making a comparative statement. Do you have any idea how bad air pollution was in the 19th century? You know that species of, what was it? That species of butterfly in the forests outside of London, where all of the non-black-winged variants of the butterfly died off because all the trees were covered in soot. So the butterflies that had a more like varied, vibrant color range in their wings died because they stood out against the black soot-colored moths, the peppered moths. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. However, in the 19th century, it was noticed that in towns and cities, it was actually the black form of the moth that was the more common than the pale peppered form. Industrialization and domestic coal fires had caused sooty air pollution. Oh yeah, people used to warm their houses by like shoving a brick of coal into a furnace. Their chimney had the pipe was like 1 centimeter wide, and they were just tossing that shit in there, breathing in the fumes. Caused sooty air pollution, which killed off lichen and blackened urban tree trunks and walls. So it was now the pale form of the moth that was more obvious to predators, and the melanic form was better camouflaged and more likely to survive and produce offspring. They also used to burn flashlight batteries to clean their fireplaces and chimneys. That rules.